Hello, welcome to breaking news here on the Blue Abroad YouTube channel. I thought we were done. I thought the breaking news from the football department point of view was done, but it's not. We have just seen a fresh report via Mitch Cleary that West Coast Premiership coach Adam Simpson is currently in advanced talks with Carlton for a director of coaching style role to assist Michael Voss in 2026. So I wanted to go through that with you in this video and unpack this story because there's a few elements to the story. As I said here, it's not an official announcement, but it's a really interesting report to be making for it to not eventuate. So the report basically says that the Blues have targeted Adam Simpson to help their beefed up football department next year, and that those close to Adam Simpson suggested he was strongly considering the new position that would be part-time. Goes further on here to say that he actually chose Carlton after being sounded out by a number of Victorian clubs. And then at the very end, and I think this is just part of the report, I don't believe this to be fact, or maybe we can debate this later, Simpson's appointment will only intensify questions over the future of Coach Voss, who has been given no assurances by the Blues and CEO Graham Wright beyond the start of 2026. So, wow, there's a few elements here. I want to go through one by one some of the pieces that come to mind when it comes to this news. So, firstly, director of coaching style role, so someone that would work in tandem with, in alignment with Michael Voss for all things coaching. It's part-time, so you would think that he's still expected to be fulfilling his media obligations. He's going to relocate to Melbourne ahead of the season, and that he has been targeted under a beefed up football department by the Carlton Football Club, assuming this has got to do with Chris Davies and or Graham Wright. So this is not a nothing story, depending on how you look at it. So if we look at the appointments so far ahead of 2026, what we know is Voss will coach, Hansen is in defence, Josh Fraser was brought to work as with the forwards. Clark and Lee Adams, who was brought in, will work with the midfield. Matty Cruz will work with the rucks. Jordan Russell will be head of development. Truslove will be the VFL coach and also in a development role. And finally, Torrin Baker. We also know that Travis Boak will be added to this mix in a leadership and culture role. So this particular appointment with Adam Simpson, should have come to fruition the way it's been reported, seems like a big picture view, strategic layer on top of the coaches. So we've moved on Brad Lloyd. We've brought in Chris Davies as the GM of footy, reshaped line coaches, and now we've brought in a premiership coach to work alongside Michael Voss. So I think now we've added some serious escalation to the football department, given we've got premiership coaching experience added to the pool of minds that will look after the Carlton Football Club in 2026 and beyond. But at this point, it seems like it's going to be a 2026 job. We all know who Adam Simpson is, premiership coach with the West Coast Eagles. He was sacked in 2024 by the Eagles after their horror run. He spent 2025 in the media. We often quoted him on this channel. We saw many clips of him talking about the game, Carlton, their identity, their DNA. But what was interesting was that he publicly said this year that he didn't want a senior coaching job in 2026. Now, this was around about the time when the speculation was mounting that Carlton might go after an Adam Simpson to replace Michael Voss or John Longmire. So this was, I guess, before the club publicly backed in Coach Voss. So what's fascinating here is, on the one hand, he said he doesn't want to coach in 2026 and that he's not in the right headspace for it. Now, this report is suggesting that he's ready to dip his toes back into the coaching mix, which, granted, is a very different proposition to full-time coaching. Now, there are a number of quotes that I found here throughout the year that I think are telling. I mentioned earlier his conversation around Carlton and their DNA. And he said in March 2025, this was on the 29th of March, so about 3 or 4 games into the season, that he was concerned about Carlton and that they were trying to fix everything at once and drifting away from what they're actually good at. And this is where the conversation turned to, what's their DNA? What are they? Are they a contested team? What are they trying to be? He identified that maybe Carlton had overcorrected in the stoppage strength versus turnover game discussion. And so I think what's important to note here is this is a guy that's been studying what is the DNA of Carlton. And he's had the entire year to watch exactly what happened this year with the Blues. He had often referred to the two pillars, given we had Charlie Curnow and Harry Mackay. And now that everything's changing, I'd be curious to see what his take on the Blues is right now and how he can align his thoughts with what Michael Voss thinks. Then there was later in the year, 9th of July on AFL 360. This was I think this is more of a personal touch as a former coach who's gone through the pressure of being a head coach. So he was on a panel with John Longmire, interestingly enough, and we're talking about the pressure that Michael Voss had come under. And I think this is also an important point that Adam Simpson can maybe help with in 2026 for Michael Voss, because I'm sure unless we start the season undefeated and have a magical start and middle and end to the season, at some point in 2026, whether it's the very beginning, the middle of the season, or towards the end, there will be the Carlton pressure. Whether that is media generated, whether that's fan generated, whatever. There is going to be a point in time next season, I think it's safe to say that there will be pressure and conversations and speculation around Michael Voss and his future at the club, given he is out of contract at the end of the year. So I think Adam Simpson right there lends to a really useful mind for the coach and also for the club as well. So that relationship is going to be empathetic, but it also has to be pretty honest to see where everything's going. So I guess I've got 3 big questions for you, and I want you to detail them in the chat below. Do you think this would be purely a supporting appointment, or do you think this has a succession plan in there? Because I did note at the very end of this report from Mitch Cleary, he made mention of the fact that, Voss will come under scrutiny and it will raise more questions. So I guess that is the first question. How do you interpret this piece of news? I guess the next question I have, this is for you and this is just in general. What does a part-time director of coaching actually do? So how involved will they be? Who will they be involved with? Is this purely for Coach Voss, or is this for all the coaches? I'm a little bit unsure on that. And then, I think overall this might be the same as the first question, but does this help or hurt Coach Voss at this point? So I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. Share with us in the comments below. And we will clearly follow this story closely. My take, I believe for the first time in a long time, I believe for the first time in Michael Voss's coaching tenure, that the club's actually trying to give him as much support as he needs going into his final year of contract and giving him the best chance to succeed. I look at this as a mechanism of support first, and if it all goes tits up and we're at the end of 2026 and the performances haven't improved significantly, because I believe if the harmony is reached in the playing group, if the harmony is reached with the coaches and the game plan and, all of the things, I think there can be significant improvement to what we saw in 2025. I thought 2025 was one of the more dysfunctional years that I can recall covering. It actually reminded me of 2021 a lot more than most years that I've seen from the club. And that was extremely dysfunctional. Now, back then, there was an argument, is it the players, is it the coach? The same argument was had this year. Back then, the coach was removed. This year, some of the key influential players were removed. They were also leaving halfway through the year. They were checked out. So there is that. But I look at this personally as, in the first instance, the opportunity for Michael Voss to have support in a number of areas, and we'll just see what happens after that. So I'd be curious. What do you think? Chat to you soon.